video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all.
Right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and welcome to the week. Welcome to Monday. On Friday's episode, we were talking about how there would likely be some chop games and volatility, some kind of pump and dump, some rug pulls, and I was kind of speculating it would all happen on the same day on Friday, but it seems that we got the pump into Friday and now we're getting the dump into Monday. Either way though, we were expecting of course some volatility and we're still in the window to find some cycle lows. So we're going to talk about that. I briefly want to take a detour for a couple of tabs, talk about rate cut probabilities, talk about some weird speculation for the US government acquiring a bunch of crypto stocks. So I want to talk about that. And then we'll just get into the meat and potatoes of this current Bitcoin spill, what it means, where we are in the cycle and all that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I just wanted to quickly point at the Fed rate probabilities because we're now north of 85. Remember, 85% is the threshold I use to say that that's going to happen with a high degree of confidence. Any print above 85%, I always accept as baked into the cake. So right now, of course, we are in favor of a cut, which means unless this thing slips back below 85%, I am going to be under the assumption we will see a rate cut into September's FOMC. Now, of course, this is quite a way away now. It's still about 3 weeks until this meeting. So I do expect this to bounce around a little in the meantime. But as of today, we are pricing in a rate cut for September. The next detour tab I wanted to take was we also noticed on Friday that the US government has acquired a 10% equity stake in Intel. Also, taking a look at the chart, does this not look exactly like a Wyckoff accumulation down here, right? It's like, this is such a textbook example of how the insiders and the institutions work, okay? They use a Wyckoff accumulation schematic to make sure they can get a big position. And then right before this thing is about to enter stage 2 or markup campaign, some big news comes out like the government is acquiring a 10% equity stake, which of course they will use to pull investors in and start to mark the price up out of this accumulation range. So I thought that was pretty interesting, right? It's a pretty nice example of how the game is played from the inside. But the main reason I wanted to talk about this is because it's quite likely, I think, and so does Max, and so do a few of you that have been messaging me on my DMs via Twitter, the government is soon going to realize they haven't got enough Bitcoin, right? And instead, they can nationalize Coin, Riot, Marathon, MicroStrategy for, quote, national security reasons, right? They could do the exact same thing they've just done for Intel, which is to say, buy a 10% controlling stake in the company. And then all of a sudden, they get a lot more say in what happens to the Bitcoin on those treasuries, right? So I think this potentially sets us up for a big narrative to drive the final push to the upside, but also, and more importantly, it perhaps sets us up for some forced selling on the way down, right? And that has long been the base case on this channel, that this bear market would be very brutal, very violent. There'd be lots of surprise leverage blow-ups. There'd be lots of things people couldn't really see coming. And ultimately, it would all just be a big game to get the price down way lower so that the big boys like BlackRock and the government et al. Can actually step in there and hoover up a bunch of cheap Bitcoin. And I just wonder if this is one potential mechanism where you get the likes of MicroStrategy or Michael Saylor, for example, being able to say, well, I never wanted to sell, but the government forced me to. Now, let's be really clear. I'm not saying that will happen. I don't even know if that is possible, to tell you the truth, okay? I'm just spitballing here. I'm just speculating. It's just a little bit of crack pipe Monday. But something along those lines wouldn't surprise me, okay? And I've been very consistent in saying that. So it doesn't matter. Okay, it's not like we have to get upset or concerned about this. It's just something we can observe from the sidelines, continue to use our cycles to guide us in and out of trade setups. And whatever happens in the meantime is really just a theatre or a play for our amusement. Now, on to the more pressing issues. I'm sure a lot of you, particularly the tape slaves amongst us, will be concerned by the current dip in Bitcoin. And of course, right into Sunday, we saw a Bitcoin whale sell 24k Bitcoin, right? 24,000 Bitcoin worth just under $3 billion, causing a $4,000 crash in minutes. Which of course begs the question, doesn't it? Why would someone want to sell a huge block to take out the entire bid stack 3 times in a row just so they can trigger sell momentum and accumulate much lower down? Possibly because they know we're right into the cycle low window and we're about to reverse and come swinging out of here in a violent manner. And I can see a lot of people getting upset with the pullback. A lot of people are getting worn out. A lot of people that are over leveraged or not managing risk are kind of getting frustrated with every time we get a big green candle, it feels like it's followed by a big red candle. But this is a really nice tweet here that frames the context of how easy this cycle has been in terms of volatility for Bitcoin, okay? During the 2021 cycle, Bitcoin dropped over 15% daily, okay, on 10 plus occasions. That is a negative 15% candle 10 times between the 2020 halving and the November 2021 top. Now we're 8 months into this 2025 cycle, and guess how many 15% daily drops we've had? That's right, 0, okay? So if you are thinking this is extremely volatile and this has been a challenging market to navigate, then imagine how hard it was the last cycle when you had 15% daily drops 10 times during the bull run. The only time Bitcoin printed a negative 15% daily candle since 2024 was during the yen carry trade unwind in August 2024, and that was a macro event that hit all of the risk assets. So Bitcoin's volatility is dying, likely thanks to the institutional adoption and the ETF flows creating natural buyers on every dip. Now, this guy here is saying don't expect a 70 to 80% bear market drawdown anymore. The institutional bid provides a floor that didn't exist in retail-dominated cycles. I personally disagree with this, but time will tell. I don't really think we need to spend too much time on this idea. My idea is simply that we will see a larger bear market than the prior cycle, and it will likely be caused by some of the hidden leverage in the system, but time will tell, right? I also think in the prior bear markets, we didn't have macro global deflationary recessions, and I think this time around we're going to. So I do think we're going to exceed the bear market decline, but time will tell, right? I could entirely be wrong about everything I just said. He does go on to acknowledge this, right? Unless Coinbase or MicroStrategy gets FTX'd, right? Unless we get some big leverage blow-ups or something under the system that no one knows exists right now comes to the surface. But barring those black swan events, the days of Bitcoin losing over 75% of its value might be over. Actually, I agree with that. Okay, I agree that we probably will have a bear market less than 75% if nothing goes bang. But I don't have the confidence in this space or in the people in this space to suggest that nothing's going to go bang. I think something's going to break, and I think it's going to cause a bunch of other things to break because humans, particularly in the crypto space, tend to be pretty shady people, right? They tend to be pretty greedy. They tend to only think in fiat terms despite being in an anti-fiat industry. And that greed tends to lead to nasty surprises and black swans. So we'll see, right? If you want to bet on the idea that everyone in this space is operating above board and nothing's over leverage and everything's going to be fine, then of course that's your prerogative. But I personally am too paranoid to take that side of the trade. And the volatility compression of this cycle signals Bitcoin's evolution from a speculative toy to institutional reserve asset. I don't know. Time will tell about that as well. But you can see here, right, 16% in a daily candle, 15, 13, 15, 15, 18, right? You can see Bitcoin used to throw these nasty downside moves. And this time around, it's really been tame, right? So the chart I just showed you showed the 1-day declines, but these are the total pullbacks, right? You can see in the first cycle, 30 to 40% pullbacks were extremely regular the entire way up. During this cycle, anything from 66% to 15% was pretty normal, with a 52 in here, right at 26, and a 32. But this cycle, it's all been 20s, 22, and we had a couple of 33s. So undeniably, this cycle has been significantly less volatile. But to me, that's just not enough to say that there's no way we can't have some big blow off top and then a nasty, violent crash. Ignore the numbers, okay? The numbers are meaningless. I've got a lovely chart here from Tony the Bull that shows, again, the importance of zooming out, okay? Because another bounce in Bitcoin is occurring at the bottom side of the wall of worry. The top of this channel is currently sitting at 183k with a move to the median line at 144k. Again, showing that just to this median dotted line is about 144k here, and beyond that is about 180k. So don't discount it. If we did move into the top of the channel and then enter a bear market, would that be totally unexpected? Would that be beyond the realm of expectation? I don't think so. Now, I don't believe this is the correct way to align the cycles, but if you align the cycles from halving to peak, then we're only 35 days away from the 2017 Bitcoin top cycle, okay, which you can see right here in green. And also that's kind of where the prior cycle topped. So we're getting dangerously close to that kind of window to see some tops come in. Again, I don't think this is the correct way to frame them. I think the cycle should be measured low to low, same with any other cycle, but it is still a piece of evidence to say we are probably, from a timing perspective, getting closer and closer every day to the ultimate top in the major 4-year cycle. And I still maintain this is the exit to the matrix play for this cycle. Cred is talking about this XRP pump, which in hindsight will be obvious, and I absolutely agree. And underneath that, somebody clipped one of his charts and stuck it in here. Note the count, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and all of this is the extended fifth. We've already done 1 and 2. We're working on 3, 4, and 5 right now. And then we can enter that bear market. If the most hated crypto is going to do most hated crypto things, okay, then all of this is 1 and 2. And we're getting ready for 3, 4, and 5 again. Again, ignore the numbers, right? There's always somebody that says, oh, you're calling for $50 XRP. No, I'm not. Okay, it's just a squiggle. But this is the exit the matrix part of the cycle, right? We're literally just staring down the barrel of the final move to the upside. Then it's all about taking profit and playing defensive until the QE and the 4-year cycle lows show up next year. And it actually looks like most are going to mess this up by assuming there's no more 4-year cycle and or that the bear market's going to be really shallow, as we were talking about earlier, right? Less than 70% bear market or whatever. But if you know where to look, you know the stocks are likely going to fall over 70% into their 4-year cycle low. So just imagine how bad it's going to be for crypto. Like I said, if you know where to look, the hyperwave, okay, this is phase 1, which is the double top from 08 and 2000, the dot-com bubble burst and the GFC. Since then, we're in phase 4, okay? So when this thing breaks, the target is the phase 1 line, okay? So if the stocks are going to make it all the way back down to phase 1 after a hyperwave violation, imagine what's going to happen to Bitcoin. Okay, that's my working hypothesis. I know a lot of people will say this is absolute nonsense and there's no way we can do something like this, okay? But time will tell. If you don't believe me, you can come up with your own trading plan. So again, no real changes to the plan, right? Still looking for the final push to the ultimate top, still looking to take profit there and get defensive. Again, level 3 members, we're going to be talking about TLT in the not too distant future. We're just waiting for one more weekly cycle low, which should also be the 7 to 8 year cycle low. And then it should be time to start playing some defense right as we start to rotate out of these kind of risk assets. And again, I just wanted to point at this because it's really important, okay? Most people are probably going to mess this up because they've gotten all the way to the finish line nearly. And they've started to say things like no more 4-year cycles, right? No more bear markets, no more drawdowns. ETF and BlackRock are not going to allow more than 30% decline, all this kind of thing. So they've finally gotten all the way here, having been right on their expectation hunt the entire time, only to move the goalpost at the final minute right before this thing rolls over. So pretty wild. And again, if you're in this camp of people that thinks the 4-year cycle is dead, well, so does some of DT's advisors and the mainstream media and all of this kind of thing, right? David Bailey out here saying there's not going to be another Bitcoin bear market for several years. So, I mean, that's the side of the fence you're on. You're on the same team as the mainstream media, which of course is your prerogative. But again, I'm far too paranoid to take that side of the trade. Slightly more concerning look here, right? Because I think a lot of people are distracted by the Ethereum pump, and frankly, I get it, right? You've been clowned on the entire cycle, and now your coin is finally ripping, and now you're finally vindicated in your conviction. But this is the overlay from 2021, okay? Ethereum is running while Bitcoin isn't, which is exactly what happened back in 2021. Back then, Bitcoin peaked for its cycle top, and Ethereum mooned right after. ETH's peak came about 2 months later. Now, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. And it's also important to note, if Bitcoin doesn't get going pretty much immediately in the next 2 to 3 days, then this scenario actually becomes extremely likely, especially if Ethereum continues to rip. And also, something that's very, very important. Back here, okay, lots of people were saying, okay, we know what comes next, right? We've seen the rotation from Bitcoin to ETH. What comes next is rotation from ETH to the small caps and a big broad-based alt season. But we actually really didn't get that. Okay, lots of people were left holding the bags, lots of people were left targeting alt season in here, and really it didn't really come. So just keep an eye out for this, and I think we should all be cheering on Bitcoin to come screaming out of here, because otherwise this cycle is pretty much done, right? Speaking of pretty much done, my timeline is getting loud about gold again, and it's right into another weekly cycle top. Just like this last one that I quoted here. This one does look a lot more typical though, not weird like the last one was. The last one was really strange because I've traded through countless weekly cycle tops for gold, but I will forever remember the prior one as the one where everyone thought no one was paying attention and nobody seemed to notice. Everyone was saying, no one's paying attention to gold, right? Timeline is ghostly quiet about gold, right into the prior weekly cycle high. And so it was pretty funny back then because that one was kind of nuanced. I don't think this one is weird. I think this one's very typical, but I did start to notice the timeline's getting loud about gold right into that weekly cycle top. So just notice right here, if I turn my indicator on, okay, weekly cycle down here where we did a big heap of accumulation in the level 3 members section, got another weekly cycle left behind us, and I have drawn an ellipse for where the weekly cycle weekly cycle high should form in terms of time for gold and all the miners, and it's inside this ellipse, which as you can see is only about, well, we're going to enter the initial part of the ellipse at the next daily cycle low, okay, and then maybe 1, 2, 3 at the most daily cycles thereafter, which remember for gold is about half that of the stock market only about 24 days in a gold daily cycle. So we're going to be in the sell neighborhood anytime in the next kind of 1 to 3 daily cycles, okay, which means we're extremely close to dumping all of the gold exposure and the miners and that kind of thing in the next couple of daily cycles here, just as every man and his dog is going to continue to get louder and louder on the timeline. So watch out for that, okay? Watch out for the people that don't have receipts that just start to post right into the tops as they always do. Watch out for that kind of thing. Watch out for the timeline to get loud. Watch out for people to start telling you that they've been buying gold the whole time, right? But they've got any receipts to show you, okay? And again, expect the Camel Crew to start to unload these positions in the next couple of daily cycles. So all is right with the world there, okay? This looks exactly how a normal weekly cycle top before the major 4-year cycle decline should unfold. Keep in mind as well, once we're in this neighborhood, okay, we are about 12 months out from the next 4-year cycle low for gold and the precious metals. So I think there's going to be some good upside here. I think silver's finally going to crack that $50 level, right? It looks like it's pretty much ready to do that. The miners continue to lead it higher. This is the silver junior miners, okay? So a bit of a shakeout Monday, and then it should continue to push to the upside. Things like Newmont have had a massive run from their weekly cycles, haven't they? So, you know, this is good, right? This is good, but you can see, as I was talking to the members about over the weekend, expect this thing to violate pretty spectacularly down into those 4-year cycle lows, and then it should be go time again. As for the stock market, this continues to close right around all-time highs, doesn't it? So this thing's still extremely bullish. We've still got a daily cycle low window in the not too distant future, and until such time as this changes, then we're still long and strong, continuing to push there. And last but not least, of course, Bitcoin. So right now, we've currently got the lowest low at day 63. Today is day 64. And remember, the tolerance for the window ends day 66. So looks a lot to me like this is the 2 drives into the cycle low. Notice how as well the indicator had this as a tradable low, and it's now abandoned it and moved to start targeting a low in here, which again, we were talking about over and over again on this channel, that that's what we wanted to see, because that means we can abandon the weird count that was going on, okay, and everything would be back to being harmonized, everything would be back to being equilibrated, and again, we would have a normal 60-day, well, plus or minus the 10% tolerance count going on here. So as long as this thing can find a swing and a low and turn around any day now, then happy days, right? Everything is right with the world. But remember, if it doesn't start to do that and follow this yellow squiggle into the weekly cycle, then we are going to have to start to put much more bearish scenarios on the table, and we're going to have to do that pretty quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time here because as I was going over for the level 3 members from a 106-day cycle count and the weekly cycle count, everything actually looks pretty good here. It's just the only component we're missing is a big green confirmation candle. But if you're wondering at what level I would consider this thing confirmed, then zooming in here, I would grab this wick and I would connect this trend line in here, and a break above there for me would be confirmation that we have got a new daily cycle in play. Also notice, as we were saying last week, okay, we got the 2 drives into a cycle low here, and that coincided with the bullish divergence on the DSS Brexit. Okay, we got the first cross into this low, and then we made a higher low cross again to confirm this is the daily cycle low, and off we go. And of course at the hard right edge, notice we've got the exact same thing. Okay, we get a decline into a low, we print the Brexit cross to confirm the swing. Okay, then we come down, we're making a lower low currently, as was talked about extensively last week on the channel, as we're about to find that bullish cross, making a higher low on bullish divergence down the bottom, inside the timing window, ready for that final push to the upside. So this is still the current lean until invalidated. It's not going to invalidate until at least we've got a cross that then rolls over and fails. So we have to just give this thing a few more days, let the market play out, let the rest of the leverage and degens get wiped, and then it'll be time for us to go back to doing what we do best. So I'm your boy Camel, have a fantastic rest of the week, and until tomorrow, take care from me, all the best, cheers, bye.
Camel Finance, he's the man to see, rocking the markets with his contrarian spree. Trades like a pro, no fear, no shame, sticking to his guns in his money game. He's a badass, oh yes indeed. Camel